You're watching 13 News Weekend with Taylor Yutzig.
Behind me, emergency crews are still on scene after a small plane crashed here around 9:30 this morning. More than 80 residents were evacuated from this area that you see behind me. It's pretty cold, but I'm staying warm right now. That's because I have my mittens, my hat, and scarf on. But come tomorrow, going into Wednesday, experts say even that is not going to be enough to keep you safe and warm with these sub-zero temperatures that we're expecting. All of these court documents I found here at the DeKalb County Courthouse, the same place where Hollenshed worked as an assistant state attorney. Soon, all 14 patrol cars at the Loves Park Police Department will be outfitted with these cameras. With the opioid crisis raging here in Illinois, more people are turning to medical cannabis. Not only is Epi super cute, she's also super talented. This race still too close to officially call. As you can see, it seems like a normal day, but it's far from normal for these students as they gear up for that Saturday Final Four showing. The blind spot behind a truck or SUV can be up to 50 feet, but what a lot of parents and drivers might not realize is that there's also a blind zone right in front of you. That's what we're talking about today. In 2017, 59 children were killed in what are called front-over accidents, when a driver pulls forward and kills a child because they never saw the child there. It's a tragedy you never see coming.
Oh, it's a parent's worst nightmare to think about what could happen.
Getting behind the wheel, unaware that a loved one is in immediate danger. That danger turning deadly for 23-month-old Jackson McSpadden, 22-month-old Jacob Mills, and 2-year-old Briley Kay, who died the day after Christmas. It happened when Briley's mom was moving the family car. She never saw Briley there.
The tragic part is usually it's a mother, a father, a close relative.
Jamie Hoskins is a mother of 2. She agreed to help us find out just how dangerous this blind spot can be. So we placed her 4-year-old daughter, Ellie, in front of her SUV. We have her right up against the car right now. Can you see Ellie?
No, I can't.
And using a measuring tape, started moving Ellie. So right here, about 2 feet, 1 foot at a time. That's 4 feet.
No, cannot see her.
Finally, at 8 feet, Ellie started to come into view.
I can see like her eyebrows, and sometimes if I'm sitting up, I can see her full eyes.
Jamie, can you see the bike at 10 feet?
I cannot see the bike at all.
So at 10 feet from this vehicle, she cannot see Ellie's red bike.
It was really shocking, actually. It never even occurred to me that the front would be as big of an issue as it's clearly turned out to be.
But experts say it's not just a big issue, it's a growing one. Between 1996 and 2000, 26 children were killed in front-over accidents when a vehicle pulls out and the front end hits a child. That number skyrocketed to 338 between 2006 and 2010. So why is this a problem now? Experts say a big part is bigger vehicles.
I mean, it comes up to here on me. So this is you're going to be looking out here. So a child this small, you're not going to see till out here.
Safety organization Kids and Cars reports 80% of front-over deaths involve a truck, van, or SUV. And even with new safety features like cameras and sensors, experts say it's still important to check every blind spot, even if that means getting out of your car and walking around.
And making sure that there's nobody around your vehicle could mean the difference between life and death or severe injury for a small child.
A simple step that could help prevent tragedy from happening in your driveway.
You'd be surprised who uses cannabis, who has their cards and don't tell anybody.
For nearly 3 years now, Colin Bond's medical marijuana card has been his ticket to pain relief.
From carrying the packs and doing hikes, I was in the infantry, so I've got some pretty bad back issues.
But it wasn't always marijuana in this Marine Corps veteran's medicine cabinet.
But as soon as I said that I was in pain, it was just we're going to prescribe you painkillers.
Bond says he took as many as 6 opioids a day to keep the pain away, eventually getting addicted. He was prepared to take those pills the rest of his life until 2013 when Illinois legalized medical marijuana.
I've been able to overcome opiate addictions to where I've had cold sweats at night to where I've completely soaked the entire bed where my wife's had to wake me up.
And we've seen when they come in here, they're able to get off a lot of those medications and get back to, some sense of normalcy in their life and the way they can operate through cannabis.
MedMar in Rockford is one of 53 medical marijuana dispensaries in Illinois. Statewide, those dispensaries serve more than 33,000 patients. MedMar says around 1/3 of its patients are veterans. And just in the last 5 months, it says that number has doubled.
There's an opiate crisis in Illinois and in this country. Thousands of people are dying every year from opiates. And what we know, one of the best benefits of cannabis is it treats pain similarly to an opiate, but it won't kill you.
So far, medical cannabis has been legalized to treat 40 conditions, including post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. But despite its success, doctors say there's still some big setbacks to prescribing it.
So physicians are very nervous, and, basically they could be in trouble for prescribing this.
That's because federally, marijuana is still illegal in any use. Doctors say that's also had a big impact on research. Medical experts like Dr. John Dorsey at Mercy Health say interest in medical cannabis is picking up, but there still needs to be more testing.
We have to be convinced. We have to have good literature. We have to acknowledge if we have biases. I think, though, it's changing. I think people are starting to rethink the value.
And a big part of that change, he says, is educating the public.
Medical marijuana is really different from recreational marijuana. That distinction isn't emphasized enough, that it's not the same as what those of us who grew up in the 60s and 70s might think is being sold out there. It's the same base, but it's a very different compound.
According to MedMar, that difference lies in the chemical structure of medical cannabis, which primarily uses CBD, a marijuana compound that does not get you high, rather than THC, which does.
There are strains you can take for pain, anti-inflammatory strains that won't get you high, but will still treat your medical conditions. So you can actually operate and function throughout the day without those types of side effects.
Something that's allowed veterans like Bond to live their life free of pain.
I believe it's a healthier option, a safer, much safer option.
But not free of stigma.
I grew up thinking that people who smoked cannabis or weed or marijuana were bad people. And that's not true. Absolutely not true.
That's why Bond is sharing his story.
I think there's a lot of stigma that it needs to go away.
To help more people understand the impact of medical cannabis when it comes to treating veterans' pain. For your 13 Weather Authority, Taylor Utzig, 13 News. It's a place survivors of domestic violence can find justice.
I want him to suffer his consequences for what he's done.
But getting that justice can take months or even years.
Why they're drawing this out, I just don't get it.
Jane Smith is a survivor of domestic violence. We've changed her name to protect her identity. She's been waiting for her day in court to confront her abuser more than a year after filing her suit, and as of today, she's still waiting.
I'd like a solid court date for trial set. I think the victim needs to have the right to a speedy trial.
Jane's case has been continued 13 times since it was filed back in May of 2017.
His attorney will say, Judge, we'd like a continuance on this, and the state just says okay, and the judge then says okay.
And then this past week, it went from bad to worse. No more continuances, no more delays, because the case was over. The judge dismissed it.
We try as hard as we can to push these cases to trial, and that's all we can do.
Judge Rosemary Collins oversees the 17th Judicial Circuit's Domestic Violence Court, one of the busiest courts in the county.
It can be frustrating on the outside when you don't really know what's going on and why this is taking a long time. And for them, it's very important. For us, it's very important. But they may not realize they have one case and we have thousands.
In 2017, the 17th Judicial Court had more than 3,100 felony domestic violence cases and another 3,300 misdemeanors.
The volume is what's driving a lot of the the continuances and a lot of the time.
And in the end, the people it affects most are survivors like Jane.
I know I'm not the only case the state has, but could you treat me like I'm the only case you have? Because it would mean a lot.
An overwhelming number of cases isn't the only issue. So is staff turnover.
We've had turnover in personnel in both our state's attorney's office and in our public defender's office. And anytime there's turnover in personnel, that just slows the whole system down.
Pushing back court dates months and often creating more confusion for victims as they navigate the system.
Victims of crimes in general often feel that they are not empowered to control what happens on the case. The premise behind that and how we explain it to victims is the system is designed to protect the rights of the accused.
That's because in some cases, the accused is the victim. Meet Heather, a mom and a survivor of domestic violence who found herself on the other side of the court process.
Fighting the charges that were against me, fighting the custody battle, paying for attorneys, then fighting the order of protection.
It's what attorneys call beating the victim to the court. And just like the abuse, Judge Collins says it's a manipulation tactic used by abusers to get the upper hand.
It is difficult, and training on that is really important, and that's why we have spent some significant time trying to help our frontline people understand about how you can identify the primary aggressor.
The abuser will attempt to file charges against a victim, and so what we do is we look at the record.
However, for Heather, it wasn't until a trained counselor wrote a letter on her behalf that she got those charges dropped.
I had to really push it. It went on for months and months and months.
That's why Heather and Jane are both coming out of the darkness and sharing their stories to show that the system can fail.
We're just barely understanding it now, and I think there just needs to be so much more education about it.
There's a lot of difficulties that victims face, and that's really why we're looking at a family justice center to try to reduce those obstacles for survivors in our communities.
Attempting to find the balance of justice.
I want our court systems to value the victim and not just who did it.
In courtrooms and the community. For your 13 Weather Authority, Taylor Utzig, 13 News.
The 911 system was designed to take care of people who were acutely ill, gravely injured, things like that. These critical things.
They're on the front lines when tragedy and illness strike.
This is a safety net for critically injured and critically ill people.
But what happens when a service that's meant to help starts to be overused?
Numbers-wise, we're looking at about 1,000 call increase between 16 and 17.
We've seen over the last 10 years, the numbers show that the volume has increased about 3% a year, fairly consistently. And then last year we saw a spike.
That spike was an increase of more than 300 medical calls. And it's not just Rockford and Freeport. Nationwide, fire departments and emergency medical services are seeing more people call 911. In 2017, Belvedere Fire Department saw its highest number of medical calls in the past 10 years. And since 2000, medical calls along with search and rescue incidents in Rockford have grown by nearly 10,000.
We do have an aging population, that the baby boomers are reaching an age that, you know, they're going to need services.
But it's not just an aging population that's behind these rising numbers.
We have a certain population that uses the system for non-critical illnesses, non-critical ailments, injuries, things like that, things like toothaches, sore throat, stuff like that. It really robs the rest of the city of that safety net that we've designed.
And that's a big problem for emergency responders when there's only so many ambulances to go around.
If we get 7 EMS calls at once and all 7 ambulances go out and an 8th call comes in and it's a very serious call, that call is going to have to wait for a private ambulance or another ambulance to free up. And that's the situation we find ourselves in.
With tight or shrinking budgets, state-line fire departments say they're having to get creative with how to address the higher demand.
We've adjusted in the last few years.
In Freeport, the department says it now cross-trains firefighters and paramedics in an effort to offer emergency services on both ambulances and fire engines.
If the ambulances are busy or they're not in that neighborhood at that time, the fire engine can still respond start that treatment on the patient, you know, whether it's IVs or medications or whatever, just like you would get on the ambulance.
Rockford Fire uses a similar technique along with a new program started a little over a year ago called the Mobile Integrated Health Program.
And if we can cut down on the amount of calls for our non-emergent problems, our tooth pains and our, you know, real not 911 calls, then we can keep those ambulances available for our heart attacks, our strokes, you know, for our community.
Of course, they can't do it alone. They need your help.
If you think you need 911, please call, and we will help you. But if you are calling for something that is not a major emergency, something that can be seen by a primary care physician, you know, please follow up on it that way.
One simple reminder for State Line citizens that could make a big difference for our first responders as they continue to work hard every day to keep you safe. For your 13 Weather Authority, Taylor Utzig, 13 News.